This week of class, we'll look at forests, rainforests, coniferous and deciduous forests, as well as the tundra. There are three major forest biomes which emerge in different regions of the world, depending primarily on temperature and rainfall patterns. The deciduous forests of broadleaf trees with moderate species diversity are, are familiar for those of you who live in New England. Coniferous forests are found in the colder regions with lower biodiversity, closer to northern regions. And a rainforest, typically broadleaf evergreens with high biological diversity, are found closer to the equator. Let's take a look. Of course, the tropical rainforests are found closest to the equator. Temperate region deciduous forests in the northern hemisphere are found with cooler temperatures. And in very cold temperatures, we find coniferous forests in the far north. Let's start with the tropical rainforest. Relatively high temperatures throughout the year, no periods of cold, and relatively high moisture, rainfall throughout the year, 10 inches per month on average here in this tropical rainforest near Singapore. Rainforests will be made up of vines, palm trees, orchids, ferns, lots of tropical fruit, and lots of biological diversity. The tropical rainforest makes up only about 6% of the Earth's surface, but contains 50% of the Earth's plants and animals because of this large biological diversity, even warm temperatures and lots of rainfall. Of course, because it's near the tropics, there's no changes in day, very few little changes in day length, and so an average of 12 hours of sunlight per day every day. One of the important facts of the tropical rainforest to remember is as much as 50% of the planet's plants and animals are found in tropical rainforests, even though they make up such a small percentage of the Earth's landmass. This rich vegetation, there are a lot of nutrients in the tropical rainforest system, but it's not found in the soil. It's found in the vegetation. When a leaf falls and dies, it's quickly decomposed, composted, if you will, and the nutrients are released to the soil. If the nutrients are not taken up by plant roots and go back into the vegetation, they'll wash away. These soils are easily weathered. And there are major problems with formerly with slash and burn agriculture, which small farmers would go and clear an area, farm it for a while, and then move on. Today, the biggest problems are with deforestation for large crops such as cattle and soybeans. Let's turn now to a deciduous forest, one which many of you will be quite familiar with. Here again, you've got year-round rainfall, but much lower than a tropical rainforest, and various highs and lows in temperature. Temperate deciduous forests are found in eastern North America, such as New England, and much of northern Europe. Moderate temperatures, moderate moisture levels, but year-round um, moisture, and a 5 to 6 month growing season because of the cold temperatures in the wintertime. Mostly broadleaf deciduous trees, nutrient-rich soil, and lots of plant biodiversity, if not as much as the tropical rainforest. During the fall, the trees change color and lose their leaves in preparation for the winter season. Because it gets so cold, the trees have adapted to the winter by going to a period of dormancy or sleep. These quite lovely areas of the world have lots of different kinds of trees, shrubs, and herbs growing. Most of the trees are broadleaf, such as oak, maple, beech, hickory, and formerly chestnut. Several different kinds of plants, such as mountain laurel, azaleas, mosses that grow in the shady areas where the sunlight can't get through. Lots of plant biodiversity in these regions. Deciduous trees, or trees that drop their leaves in the wintertime, dominate these temperate forests. Originally, the deciduous forests of North America were quite extensive. Today, they've been rapidly changed by agriculture and urban development. Let's take a look at how the deciduous temperate region forest of New England has changed by focused in Massachusetts. These are photographs from a diorama at the Harvard Forest. 300 years ago, this region was dominated by old growth hardwood trees. As European settlers arrived, trees were removed by burning to make room for farms. Still, the farms were far apart, and much of the forest remained. Before the American Civil War, almost all of New England had been deforested to allow for farms. Many of the farms grazed sheep high up into the slopes, and only the steepest slopes would have had much trees left. With the migration of settlers following the Civil War to the rich soils of the Midwest, New England farms were abandoned and some small trees returned. Some abandoned farms were planted with plantation style white pine trees, changing the nature of the landscape once again. As the pines were cut and the timber industry moved to the west and the south, hardwoods once again began to populate the New England landscape. By the 1930s, most of the farms were gone in northern New England and disappearing rapidly in Massachusetts and Connecticut. Hardwoods were returning by the 1930s. Today's forest landscape in New England is dominated once again by hardwood trees. However, the story is not over. This landscape is being seriously threatened by urban and suburban sprawl. We turn now to the third major forest type, the coniferous forests, which are dry and cold. Here you can see low rainfall throughout the season and extremes in temperatures. Coniferous evergreen trees are trees that produce cones and needles. Some needles remain on all year long, very few broadleaves in this region. It's between the tundra in the north and the deciduous forest to the south. This is a relatively large region of coniferous forest. Conifers tend to be evergreen, that is, they bear needles all year long. These adaptations help conifers survive in areas that are very dry or very cold. Some of the more common conifers are spruces, pines, and firs. And finally, we look at the frozen north, the tundra, and some of its inhabitants. As you'd expect, the tundra is dry and cold, relatively dry year round, and highs in the midsummer of only 30 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The tundra is the coldest of our biomes, also receives the lowest amount of rainfall, making it similar to a desert. Tundra is found in the regions just below the ice caps of the Arctic, extending across North America to Europe and Siberia. It's a relatively large landmass. Much of Alaska and about half of Canada are also tundra biome. Tundra is found at the tops of the various highest mountains as well in some parts of the world. A few years back, my three sons decided to travel to the tundra. They were concerned that the polar bears were being eliminated by global climate change, and they wanted to see the polar bears before they were gone. We'll take a look at this in a few minutes. Tundra winters are long, dark, and cold, with average temperatures below freezing for 6 to 10 months of the year. Temperatures are so cold that there's a layer of permanent frozen ground below the surface called permafrost. This permafrost is a defining characteristic of the tundra biome, although because of climate change, the permafrost in some regions are melting. In the summer months, the top few inches of the soil may thaw out, allowing plants to grow. But the plants are always short and shallow-rooted. The tundra is the farthest northern biome where plants exist, just south of the frozen regions of the Arctic. The vegetation of the tundra has adapted to this cold and short growing season. Mosses, sedges, and lichens are common, very shallow rooted and short plants. Because decomposition of the plant materials is so slow, microbial breakdown is slow, there's very little soil as well. If you're looking for plant life in this region, much of it is actually found in the ocean. Algae support complex systems of zooplankton, which feed larger animals in this region. And the algae are changing also because of climate change. There are very few large animals, and those that exist can eat close to the ground. They're called browsers. They can eat small plants and lichens. There is one quite famous large animal, however. Can you guess what this animal is? It's being threatened by human activity. That's right. Polar bears are well adapted to this region, but because of climate change, they're being threatened. If you were to visit Churchill in Manitoba, northern Manitoba, you can see the polar bears that are remaining. You ride in a large vehicle to protect you from these bears. They're very curious and they're very rarely afraid of vehicles. Let's look at how the polar bears live in the tundra region. Polar bears have evolved to live in this region along with other animals. When the ice freezes, the bears can hunt the bearded and ringed seals, but they have to be on the ice to catch these seals, and bears eat a lot. Without solid ice, the bears can't hunt the seals effectively. A 1,200-pound adult polar bear needs an awful lot of seal to eat. Just like all plants and other organisms that fit neatly into a particular environment, polar bears have adapted to that environment through evolution. Furry feet and large claws are part of those adaptations. These large animals fit into this particular region, but this region is changing. One of the things I was curious about, I asked my sons about, is what do these bears do all day? Well, they seem to sleep a lot. And according to my sons who took all these pictures, they seem to also love to play. And at night, they hunt to feed themselves. Large animals eat smaller animals, and animals eat yet smaller animals. The seals are eating the fish, and the fish are eating the zooplankton. Plankton eat algae, and the algae, kind of eats sunshine. This whole system is changing rapidly, and it's affecting the polar bears as well as all the other animals in the region. Of course, you all know that the burning of fossil fuels and rainforests, the primary cause of global change is warming the Arctic region and the tundra. We are destroying their habitat by burning fossil fuels and the rainforests. This triggers climate change and polar ice cap melting. With less ice, the bears can't hunt the seals. With less ice and warmer water, the algae, the autotroph populations in the region are all changing, which means larger organisms have to change their diet to survive. This cascades all the way from algae through zooplankton, small invertebrates, small fish to large seals, and of course the bears. The entire food web of the tundra is shifting because of climate change. Our activities, normal human activities, are destroying their home. Understanding a bit about the complexities of ecosystems, even those far away from us, helps us make more conscious choices about our personal behavior. We're going to look at this in the last section of this unit on ecological living in us.